Okay, so here we're going to start a video on how groups perform and factors that influence group performance. Okay? So in the organization, you're going to have work groups, that is, individuals that whose goals are shared, whose roles are interdependent upon each other. They could be formal groups or informal groups, depending on what the needs are. A team is more formal. That is, it's really, we have a very specific task which must be performed, therefore we're going to create a team. So it's like a group, it's just more formalized. Okay? So the 5 stages where groups develop. Number 1, they form. That is, the members get together, they introduce each other, people are polite with each other, doesn't. Storming, where we're talking about people have gotten to know each other well enough, they start to disagree with each other, some conflict starts to emerge. And then finally, third is norming, and we've already talked about norms, but you're going to get some norms for the group, who's supposed to do what, who takes turns, etc. And then finally, you're going to get performing, which is where you're actually going to start to get production out of the group. Okay, this is where our group is really going to get a job done. And then finally, adjourning. Okay? So, one of the most important parts about how effective a group will be is cohesiveness. Cohesion is sort of like the strength of the bonds between people that maintain. Cohesion in some way is kind of a similar idea to loyalty. High cohesion is often better. That is to say, productivity and efficiency goes up in a highly cohesive group. Decision quality goes up with a highly cohesive group. The members of the group are more satisfied with each other. Interactions are better. Courtesy with each other is better. But, and we're going to talk towards the end of this video, highly cohesive groups can become a victim of groupthink. Okay? So high cohesion is not always good. So what creates a cohesive group? Stable membership. Groups in which members remain for long periods of time. Those that have worked together in the past in other groups are more cohesive. So, this is always an issue when I'm on many faculty committees. Oh, God, more than I can count. It's kind of stupid because faculty committees when assigned to a committee, it depends on the committee, but it is either a 2 or a 3-year committee assignment. So you're on it for 2 or 3 years. You're like, oh, cohesiveness. But what happens is that the membership is rotating, all the time rotating. So every single year, the team or the committee has different members every year because every single year it's rolling. Some faculty are this year, some are that year, some are that year. So even though there should be some continuity, there's no cohesiveness in these groups. Groups that are isolated tend to become more cohesive, all right? Psych department is more cohesive than other departments because we're on our own. Yep, nobody bothers us. It's awesome. Outside pressure can definitely increase cohesiveness. So it's like a psychological reactance. I love this one. Absolutely no machete juggling. Suddenly I had the urge to juggle machetes. So, seen in like labor negotiations, that if management and unions disagree, then all of a sudden the unions are going to become even more cohesive and strengthen their resolve. Group size. Smaller groups tend to be more cohesive. Large groups tend to be less productive. What is large? It depends on the task. Large groups tend to have less coordination and less identification of who's responsible for what. They're less active, less cohesive, less critical. Whoa. So groups perform best when they consist of about 5 members. And faculty committees at Texas Wesleyan tend to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tend to be about 6, all right? There's 1 representative from the College of Education, 1 from the library, 1 from the College of Business, 1 from the College of Health Sciences, and then 2 from the Arts and Sciences. Okay. The higher a group status, the more cohesive it is. So increasing group status. A group does not actually have to have high status, they just have to believe. And the Marine Corps manipulates this by phrases like a few good men, and they kind of create the illusion that if you're a Marine, then you're somehow better or something. It's like, no, sorry, that's not true. Another issue that impacts the effectiveness of groups is homogeneity. A homogeneous group has a whole bunch of members that are exactly the same. Okay? Heterogeneous groups have members that are all different. And by same or different, you could be, gender. A homogeneous group could have 5 males in it, something like this. But it could also be a homogeneous group is one where every single member is high in extroversion. Okay, so it could be personality factors that define what equals homogeneous or heterogeneous. Okay, and so it appears that having a fairly homogeneous group with perhaps one person that's quite different is the most effective. So these 4 people are kind of working together in some cohesive way, and then that one outsider throws a bomb in once in a while to shake up what the 4 are thinking. Okay, so kind of a cool idea. Obviously, groups that have high ability members, right, outperform those that have low ability members. That seems to be one of them common sense outcomes. I wonder if Devine and Phillips needed to justify their job at that point in time. Anyway, groups whose members believe their team can be successful, so we're talking about a self-efficacy kind of thing. Do you believe that your efforts will lead to results? Okay. Personality factors, groups are better if, say, for example, the group members are high in openness. Remember our 5 personality traits: ocean, openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. Okay, so if you have personality traits that are reflective of openness and emotional stability, you'll have a more effective group. Okay? If you have an intellectual task, you want people that are kind of smart. That would be helpful. If you're working on a physical task, such as a sports team, you're better off if they have personality characteristics such as conscientiousness, extroversion, and agreeableness. Okay? Here's a very cool study. I like this one. I found this one on a podcast one time. It was hilarious. Okay? So they looked at the personality on group performance in chickens. I can always appreciate chicken research. So here's what they did, okay? They took the highest individual chickens, and they bred them for 6 generations, okay? And then they took the highest producing group of chickens and let them breed. Okay, so they identified the individual. So here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one. And in the second scenario, they just said, this is a group that works together the best. Okay? So after 6 generations, they put them together, and the offspring of the individuals were aggressive when you put together them into groups, and they killed each other. Okay? So it turned out the reason that the highest performing individuals were in fact so productive is that they were doing it by lowering the productivity of the other chickens. Okay? They weren't doing it because they were good, but by harming the others. The offspring of the best group of chickens were not aggressive and continued to produce at a high rate. So, kind of an interesting thought. A genetic predisposition for being an effective group member. And I mean, it's somewhat logical as we went through the personality traits that are involved, and personality traits are pretty strongly genetically oriented. So this final line ought not be terribly much of a surprise. Effective groups need to have effective communication structures, and some possible communication structures might be person A tells person B tells person C, or A and B communicate and B and C communicate, or maybe it's just A tells B, B tells C, C brings it back, or A and B have this, and so they all have a mutual. And which is the best? It depends on the task. But lots of different possible communication structures. But one of the negative outcomes of groups, and in particular highly cohesive groups, is called groupthink. It's a mode of thinking where individuals agree with each other because they're so cohesive, the norm is to not disagree, perhaps. And so alternatives are not, which is why you kind of need to have that one extreme outsider who's going to always throw the bomb on the group and say, I know you think that's the best answer, but what about this? Okay? And so we find that high group cohesion, that a group that is isolated, a group that has a strong leader, but a leader that is incredibly biased, or high decision, you've got to make your decision now. Okay? And so if these antecedents are present, you're likely to have groupthink. What are some of the symptoms of groupthink? Our group is invulnerable. All decisions we make, of course, they're unanimous. Anybody that sort of gives any alternative views are sort of frowned upon. So all kinds of different, things here would be symptomology, and then ultimately defective decision making. And this is apparently the cause of a variety of major disasters come from groupthink. We can prevent groupthink, and there's a variety of ways that we can do so. We find that groupthink was particularly prevalent in Japanese industries. When the Japanese industries were powering up in the 1970s, Toyota and many others, obviously Sony, etc. And these businesses were starting to become global powers. But what was happening is that they had such a hierarchical power structure that the boss would say, I think we should do this plan of action. And everybody in the room said, yes, boss, you're right. That's what we should do. Okay? Because that's just what you have to do with your boss. You have to agree with your boss no matter what you think inside. And so this is the ultimate group think. And so what they did was they devised a reverse structure. If you go to any group of Japanese individuals, they will every single member will know exactly what the social hierarchy is. They will be able to rank every single member top to bottom. Okay. So when looking into what we should do, you start with the very bottom person in the hierarchy and get their opinion. What do you think? Oh, I think we should do A. Now you ask the next person up the hierarchy. Now they are free to express their opinion because they will offend nobody, because the only person that has spoken at this point is somebody below you on the hierarchy. And so they continue to work your way up so that every single member of the group is able to give an independent report of what they believe to be true. Okay? All right, so that's what we got for this one. Yeah, look at that. Youngest workers give their ideas first. All right.